Well, Kevin, recently we both read an essay in The New Yorker called Will the Humanities Survive Artificial Intelligence? And it gave both of us a lot to think about when it comes to education and AI.
Well, I actually didn't read it. I had AI summarize it for me. And that really gets to the heart of today's segment, which is what is AI doing to higher education? We just talked about what it is doing to K through 12 education and some of the new models that are being proposed and experimented with for younger kids. But this is also a conversation that is playing out at colleges and universities, which is why I was so excited to talk with D. Graham Burnett. He is a historian of science and technology at Princeton, and he wrote this really great essay in The New Yorker. I did actually read it. I was joking. And, there's been no shortage of professors and college administrators and presidents sort of opining on how AI and education will intersect. But what I really appreciated about Graham Burnett's essay was that he argued that this could actually be a good thing for the humanities in particular. That's his area of focus. And he has been sort of tracing the decline of the humanities over the years. And he now thinks that AI could help revitalize them by sort of encouraging colleges and universities to focus on the life of the mind and some of these deeper questions about what it means to be a human.
He also just writes about some really interesting ways that he and his students have been using AI. He has been encouraging them to have these extended conversations with chatbots, edit that down into these conversations that reveal something both about the student and the language model that they are learning. And so while no one professor is going to have a perfect prescription for what you should be doing with AI in your classroom, in fact, as he tells us, the humanities are very different from computer science, for example, when it comes to how you might use AI. I do think he just has some really interesting conversation starters and thoughts for us as we enter a new school year.
Yeah. So let's talk with Graham Burnett. Graham Burnett, welcome to Hard Fork.
Oh, it's so good to be here.
Where are we catching you today? Are you at your school? Are you at Princeton?
I am. I'm in my office here in History of Science, History in Dickinson Hall in Princeton, New Jersey, Princeton University.
You have many books behind you for our viewing audience.
Wait, it's called the History of Science History Hall?
No, History of Science is like a program within the history department.
I see. That makes more sense.
Science, technology, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Sorry, Casey didn't go to college, so he's a little challenged here. Graham, I wonder if you could start by just describing the picture of AI and higher education as you see it. You wrote this great piece in The New Yorker about your sort of realization that AI was going to be a big deal, maybe a bigger deal than a lot of your colleagues in academia gave it credit for. So what convinced you that AI was going to be unlike other technologies that universities and schools have faced?
Well, these technologies are changing very fast, so it's always a little dangerous to predict. But there can be no doubt that these technologies emulate human thinking, analyzing, and expressive powers, and do so with sufficient sophistication as to make their output indistinguishable from human work, basically. And that means that a bunch of the ways that we've operated in colleges and universities to educate students are off the table.
You write about this really fascinating exercise that you did with your students where you gave them the assignment to have a conversation with a chatbot about the history of attention, edit the text down to 4 pages and turn it in. And you write, reading the results on your living room couch turned out to be the most profound experience of your teaching career. Tell us about what you thought you were going to get out of students doing that exercise, and then why it wound up being so profound for you.
Yeah, so it's true. I wanted to experiment with developing some new kinds of assignments in my classes that feel equal to this moment. And the class in question is a class on the history of human attentional capabilities. And so the students had read their way through a bunch of dense stuff, history of monasticism, all the way through to the attention economy. And because the attention economy is driven by intelligent algorithms that figure out how to maximize time on device, I thought it would be interesting for the students to go into a conversation with AI, a chatbot, about a topic that in some sense AI is pretty good at: analyzing human attention, optimizing feeds for human engagement, attentional engagement. And I didn't really know what would come out of the thing. I want to emphasize that I didn't especially have an expectation.
Okay.
The power of what emerged was in line with my high hopes, rather than exactly defying my expectations. But I will say this: I've spent 30 years reading student work, and part of the power of sitting and reading this stack of papers was the uncanny feeling that I was watching a generation feel out the emergence of a kind of alien, familiar, ghost, god, monster child. And that was intense because the kids, my students, are primed, and the machine is special right now. It's kind of feeling its wild oats, if you know what I mean. And so to watch them kind of like test each other out in the ring, what have you got? Oh, and they know they're going to be working with each other for some time to come. I would say that was the overarching feeling of the uncanny that settled on me with those papers.
You also recount the experience of a student who finds herself feeling like when she is in conversation with the chatbot, she is able to get a better understanding of her own beliefs, of her own knowledge, because it is so patient and it is so private, and she doesn't have to interrupt everyone. She doesn't have to come to your office hours and, wait in a line of students. And I was so struck by that idea because we've heard it now in a number of contexts. We recently had someone telling us about the experience of chefs who have had the exact same experience, and now they feel like they can explore so many other cuisines because they don't have to be embarrassed and call, some chef at another restaurant and ask them, how to make the pad thai or whatever it might be. So I'm wondering what you can tell us about that sort of use case. Are more students finding that there actually is this intellectual avenue that they can pursue with ChatGPT, and it is not about writing the essay for them. It is sort of about like being in communion with the subject matter?
Yeah, I think that this moment with this particular student was very affecting because it wasn't just that the machine was so patient and was willing to pay attention to her like practically no human ever had. It went a step beyond that. What she actually said was, I got to be inside my intelligence in a way that felt kind of new to me because I wasn't worried about the person I was talking to. Very smart young woman, very sensitive young woman, conscious of the people around her. And I don't want to speak for her, but I think it's fair to say she had, like a number of my, very brilliant, often female students, spent a certain amount of time trying to make sure that she didn't like blow away her interlocutor with her own intellect. So kind of just being a little like keeping it under a wrap, going slow, making sure that whoever she was talking to wasn't feeling intimidated. You can sort of imagine that dynamic. And
I can't actually. This is not a problem I have. Kevin blowing away people with my intellect.
Actually, what it is, Kevin, is that certain people had mothers who loved them so much that they never actually think that anyone could want anything but to hear more from them. And I'm one of those guys. But this girl was not like that. And so she was like, wait, with the machine, I don't have to take care of this machine. I can bring full force. And it was like, whoa, she was rolling out her powers. And I thought that was an extraordinary kind of insight into a thing these machines can provide in that context.
So if this is where students are at the beginning of this school year, sort of, engaging with these chatbots, having these sort of profound or engaging experiences with these AI systems, I want to ask about where you think teachers are, faculty members at Princeton and other elite universities, college administrators. What is the posture of universities toward AI heading into this school year, and how has it changed from maybe a year or two ago?
It's all moving so fast, Kevin, and so difficult to get a vector, but still pretty defensive, I would say. Still concerned, with the police function of the professoriate. We're like the sheriffs, and so the concern is all my assignments are now useless. I can't assign papers. Am I going to have to do a blue book exam? Are the students going to do the reading, or are they just going to feed it to Notebook LM and turn it into a podcast? We're a relatively conservative cohort, maybe not politically, but in terms of the lag time on change within the humanities in particular. So there's a concern that I'm going to have to change my class, which is a pain because I'm going to have to do things differently. So that would be my vibe check. Speaking very generally, there are of course exceptions, but I would say that's still basically where things are.
And what's your vibe check on where you've arrived for your own approach to education? In your piece, you write about what I think sound like some really cool assignments, but how are you thinking about this coming year? Are you still kind of developing new approaches? Do you feel like you've got a toolkit? Where are you?
I'm on sabbatical this year, so I'm working
congratulations!
On a book. So I'm hunkered down and trying to get a book finished before I have a newborn baby on my hands.
Makes sense.
But I will speak to that because here's where you go to the core. What do you want from a university?
Mm-hmm.
What do you want from education? I don't really care especially about their job training functionality. There are plenty of other people who can worry about that. What I care about in education, what got me into this business and keeps me in it, my mission critical love of what I do in this kind of space and in my classrooms, working to give shape to persons equal to the conditions of freedom. That's what matters to me. I believe that there really is something about taking shape as a human being who is responsible to the inheritance of your freedom in relation to others and in relation to yourself. And I believe that colleges and universities are a space where that work must continue to happen. So if you care about that, I actually think that this moment is very exciting because all of our kind of police functions are kind of going down the tubes. And a lot of what we've previously asked students to do, which is to perform a kind of karaoke dance of being a professor, producing new knowledge about Shakespeare, just like I do. So write a paper that looks like a mini and slightly sucky version of an academic article that I would write after studying Shakespeare for 26 years. That's pointless. In fact, even the article that you, my fellow professor colleague, were going to write about Shakespeare, that's kind of increasingly useless because the systems can produce a shit ton of interesting articles about Hamlet iteratively. And so it becomes like prompt engineering. The question is not, can we write 500 new papers about Hamlet? It's, does anyone want to read them? And so asking the students to produce several hundred new papers on Shakespeare, you can't actually make them do it anymore. So the good news from my perspective is, while I think those activities are interesting and important, I never really thought of them as at the heart of what you would want a college or a university for. So I'm kind of happy to kind of let them lightly slip away. Now, that's a pretty positive vision. I want to be clear about something. There's another much less happy possibility, which is that everybody's like, you know what, this humanities stuff, we never really understood it anyway. The whole point of colleges and universities is to prepare people for the job market and to maximize the ROI of their tuition. And then the humanities come to end in colleges and universities. I think that is, frankly, the more likely scenario. So let me be bleak for a moment. I think that the most important forms of that work are going to need to happen outside of colleges and universities. It's another way of saying that colleges and universities, it's not really their fault, but the shifting economics of education has actually meant that just about everybody, the administrators, the parents, the kids, are all thinking so much in terms of return on their tuition investment and interpolating themselves into an increasingly exigent job market.
Right. I mean, I think that's the key tension here is There are a lot of ways that you could spend 4 years discovering yourself and your highest purpose that don't involve paying hundreds of thousands of dollars for a college education and potentially going into debt that you're going to be working off for decades to come. What is the value proposition, to sort of borrow the language of companies, that colleges and universities can offer to students and parents who are staring down the barrel of this enormous tuition bill to say, this is going to be worth it for you?
Yeah, it's a beautiful question. It's not really my question in a way. I basically believe at this point that the good work, the work I care about, is going to need to happen in thousands of new schools that are going to arise outside of the traditional framework of extremely expensive university education. And that is actually a very exciting moment in the history of education. And I think that AI is going to help break, in a sense, the university model that has anyway reached a certain kind of endgame. So we're now talking very big, but this kind of thing has happened before. Remember, I'm a historian, the emergence of schools that taught in secular settings in the vernacular was itself a very specific historical development. So, it was the end of a certain kind of monastic training in the Renaissance. This is happening again. Like the university model and that value proposition that you're calling for, other people have to answer for that. I'm interested in creating new kinds of schools in which people can continue to explore how to live and what to do, what historical consciousness means, and think about tradition and where we're headed. And that doesn't, the humanities exist as a set of fields precisely because they don't monetize.
One thing that I'm just realizing through this conversation and our last segment is how important the shape of education is to what actually ends up being transmitted and learned. You're going to have a very different experience learning something one-on-one from a computer program than you are from being taught by a teacher standing at the front of the class. And that experience might be very different from learning in a more like collaborative and active way with a group of your peers. And so I guess I'm curious, Graham, what you think the ideal shape of a humanities education in the kind of post-AI age is. Is it students who are sitting around a classroom discussing things that they've previously discussed with their AI tools and done sort of self-guided learning on? Is it professors still giving lectures and students supplementing that with what they're learning from AI? Like, what is the shape that is most conducive to the type of humanities education that you want students to get?
From my perspective, the biggest change that we need to implement urgently, and that we are implementing, but it's not happening as fast as it needs to, is a shift in literacy. It will pain me to say this, and it may pain some of your readers to hear this, but long-form immersive literacy is coming to an end as a widespread cultural phenomenon. People do not read now like they did 10 years ago. They don't read like they did 2 years ago. They definitely don't read like they did 30 years ago. Now, this gets complicated. Who, people, where, how much literacy was there ever, bracket all that. Even in the most elite circles, the ability to give yourself to an immersive textual experience is ending. This has enormous implications for a tradition that has meaningfully inscribed itself textually. And part of what you came to university in the humanities to do was to read books, but you can't anymore because nobody can read them. So now what we can do is give people short sections from books and ask them to do stuff with those short sections of books, dramatize them, discuss them, perform them, enact them, sing them, memorize them, cut them up into little pieces and stick them on the walls of their friends' dorm rooms. Because the stuff that's in those books, we aren't going to lose. We're going to carry elements of the tradition forward. And people are not going to get stupider. People are getting smarter. But their ability to immerse themselves in a tradition that presents itself like this is finished. I mean, that's why y'all do a podcast, basically. This is orality. Like once upon a time, you'd have been journalists writing long pieces. You each kind of have been that from it. But in fact, now this is what journalism increasingly is. So we are moving into a culture of orality, but we have a humanistic structure within modern colleges and universities that is still rooted in textuality, but that's finished.
Do you think that we've sort of reached peak college 10, 15 years from now because the humanities may be switching to this sort of deeper form of inquiry rather than getting people a credential to go out and get a job? Do you think fewer people need to go to college, should go to college, will go to college?
My mother was a college president, lovely place called Conn College. My dad was a dean. I grew up like on campus. Like my earliest memories was getting Fruit Loops out of the dispenser in a college cafeteria at Indiana University in Bloomington. So like you're looking at a dude who's like spent his entire life on a campus. I love these spaces. I think it's a very important time for people who care about decency and goodness to rally to the defense of colleges and universities under trying conditions. However, yes, the thing that has made colleges and universities in America so special over the last 75 or 80 years is winding out. Some of the old motherships, Princeton, Harvard, Yale, Stanford, they're not going to change that much. But a lot of the other institutions, we're seeing it already. They got to get dynamic or die. But we are going to create lots of new schools where that work of soulcraft can happen. It's going to be part of people's working lives. It's going to be financed totally differently. It may not be like accredited at all or provide any kind of certificate or diploma, but people want still to do that work and they need that.
Yeah, I have to say it makes me a little sad. I feel like I was able to have my cake and eat it too in college because I did a journalism and an English major. And the journalism major was the ROI because I was going to need a job when I graduated. And the English major was an excuse to read novels because I wanted to read a lot of novels. And so I was able to have the kind of combined experience. And I'm wondering if there is a way to keep those two things together or if that truly is just an artifact of the time that I grew up.
I do think basically, like everything else, that was a historical moment.
If you could incept one sentence, one idea about AI into the minds of humanities professors and college and university administrators around the world, what would it be?
I'll try one. I mean, it's a very difficult question, obviously. Let's try this. This is not a test. This is real. Gather up what you've got, what you think education is for, what you think the college and the university experience are for, and get ready to bring it because this is going to be the crucible for the kind of work you say you care about.
Well, Graham, I think that's a really good place to end it. Thank you so much for chatting with us. And people should go read your piece. It's in the New Yorker. It's called Will the Humanities Survive Artificial Intelligence?
Thanks for the opportunity to talk with you all. It's really
Thanks, Graham. It was super interesting.
Thanks, Graham.
Hey, that's the end of this clip. If you liked what you saw, head on over to our page and subscribe, and you can get the full podcast. We do a show like this almost every week on tech and the future. Head on over there now and subscribe.